Yo guys, what's up? It's your boy Nathan back at it again with another video. I do want to apologize if I'm out of breath or it's slow for me to talk. It's due to the fact that I am feeling a little bit under the weather today, but that's not going to stop me from trying to push out as much content as I can. Other than that, I'm super excited today. Today is going to be a great day, and that's due to the fact of me being able to pick up another mod for the car. This is a mod that I've been super excited and super waiting to get my hands on. And let me go ahead and just take you guys to the back of the car and show you guys what I got. So here it is, guys. I did open the box already. I was super excited to actually take a look at him, but I got me some Ohlins. These are the DVFs. Just look at the craftsmanship of this product, man. It's like super well made, and it's definitely high quality. I had KW V3s before on my F80, and I honestly can tell you that these look definitely more high quality than the KWs. And the reason why I went with Ohlins is just something that everybody recommends for a more comfortable ride on the street with occasional spirited driving. For this specific setup, I ended up going with just the out-of-the-box setting. So this is a 10K up front with the 8K rears. The reason why I went with this setup is because I wanted to make sure that I actually enjoy the 8K and 10 and 8K first, right? Because I wasn't sure exactly the goal of this car is, right? I really want to eventually one day take a few track days, but for how I use it on a day-to-day basis is just pretty much just driving around and spirited driving on the weekends. So I didn't want to get stiffer springs right off the bat because it might be too stiff. So I just wanted to try the 10K and 8K first, see how it is, and if I want to go stiffer, then that's something that I'll account for in the future, right? But other than that, let me go ahead and show you guys what else is inside the box. So essentially we got the dampers right here. It's gonna be the front and the rears inside this box. These are the rubber garments, just a bunch of instructions. The other box will have your springs, which looks amazing, and you have your top hats and spacers and everything else that is associated with this, just building this together. The one downside is that you do have to adjust this and yourself, or build it up yourself and set the preloads. There are some other added things that I got from Sakebomb. Good thing Sakebomb is in Fremont, so it's not too far away from where I live, so I was able to just stop by there, talk to the guys there, and get their feedback about what I should and shouldn't do, or get addition to the actual Ohlins itself. So definitely I like my car to sit a little bit lower, right? Normally we're looking at like maybe 1.5 finger gap. That's my expected goal for this car. So if you guys all know, the Ohlins, they don't go too low, and due to the fact that you need more preload in the back, and by adding more preload, it's actually going to raise up the car a little bit, and that just to make sure that you have enough travel and not hit the bump stop. So if you want to go flush or go super low, out of the box setup wouldn't work for you. So that is why Sakebomb actually created these lower cups, right? And I got some of these, and they're super lightweight, and they should definitely allow me to go a lot lower while keeping the preload for the rears. Something else that I also got are these actual remote adjusters, right? So what these actually do is it's gonna sit on the adjusters on the top of the rear coilovers, and it's gonna allow me to adjust the coils without digging my hand through the back or opening up the body panel inside of the trunk or the body liner. So I plan on mounting them in a way where when I just open up the trunk, I'll be able to adjust them without actually having to set up the actual, or taking apart the actual liners itself. So I know this was a lot to take in, guys, but bear with me, okay? I'm actually gonna go ahead and lay everything out now, and just take you guys through the process of how to set up the preload and get the coilovers ready. All right, guys, before we get started, here is just a quick overview of everything that comes inside of the packaging, with the addition to the extra parts that I got from Sakebomb. So here you go. just keeping everything very well organized, so hopefully it will make the installing process much quicker. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I already assembled one already, just to make sure that everything fits correctly. But essentially what you need to do is go ahead and take one of your dampers, right? And I'm using a 14 millimeter socket. And what you want to do is just make sure that you twist the set adjuster all the way to one side so it locks in, and use your 14 millimeter socket and kind of just crack this open, right? And once you have that open, you can just slowly make sure that you twist them at the same pace, right? So that when they come apart, there you go. And keep this on the side. So the next thing you need to do, at least for the fronts, at least, is get one of your dust boots. Go ahead and set it in, and then you will need one of these spacers right here. So this is the 10K one right here. Put this bad boy over, and before that, I totally forgot, you need one of these O-rings right here, right? Set that on the bottom of the perch. Put this bad boy on top. Make sure that is staying, that is seated. Then you're gonna go ahead and put in the spacers, and then from there just go ahead and put the top hat on. Make sure that is aligned correctly, and from there you will go ahead and put the other bolt right here on, and it should sit flush with inside of the top hat, right? Once you have that in place, just go ahead and put the adjuster back on, slowly making sure that you're not twisting it too fast and twisting it together. And there you go, now it's locked in place. And definitely you want to tighten it down, but that's essentially all you need to do to set them up real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and just build the other four, and then we'll go ahead and start setting the preload and whatnot. So it's relatively straightforward, and hopefully, you know, this process doesn't take too long. So we got all four suspension or coilovers built, and all we really need to do now is essentially add preload onto it. And adding preload is relatively easy. Just make sure that you have your measurements correctly. So the manual itself says that for out of the box, it's recommended that we give it a 1 millimeter of preload. So essentially the stock springs should be 200 millimeters, right? So 1 millimeter should give us a length of 199 millimeters from the top hat all the way down to the top of the perch right here. I actually talked to Sakebomb, and they actually recommend a 2 millimeter preload instead. So it's going to be instead of 199, it will be 198 from the top hat to the bottom of the perch. So essentially, I don't have, my digital caliper doesn't go that high, so I'm just using a ruler in this case. So essentially, we want to measure from the top hat, and essentially 198 millimeters is close to about, if I recall correctly, 7 inches and 3/4, right? So we're gonna want to adjust the preload so that way it's 7 inches and 3/4. Right here, up should be somewhere against this line right here, and we'll just go ahead and adjust the preload so that way it measures up correctly. And I'll go ahead and, in order to do that, what you need to do is essentially loosen up the lock ring right here, and just keep twisting the bottom perch up here until it becomes 198 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you guys what it looks like with a regular one and a one that is already preloaded. All right, so here's a side-by-side comparison of one that is preloaded and one that isn't. So this one right here is the one that's preloaded, and this one is not preloaded. As you can see, it's definitely a bit shorter right here, right? It's more compressed on this one, on the one that's preloaded. So I measured it right here. It's essentially you know, really close to 198 millimeters. If you have a digital caliper, that'll probably be, you'll be able to get it spot on, but from the looks of it, it shows exactly like I said, right? Right here from the top hat to the bottom perch right here is literally pretty much 7 3/4 inches right there. So that equates to pretty much close to 198 millimeters. So I'm gonna go ahead and once you have that done, just go ahead and just lock down your perch. And you know, I'm not gonna worry about the ride height yet. I'm gonna do the ride height after I set all the preload for these. And I'm most likely just gonna go with the stock ride height right now, or not stock ride height, but recommended ride height. And once it's on the car, I'll adjust it as needed. But yeah, other than that, let me go ahead and finish up the front ones, and then I'll show you guys essentially the same steps for the rears. So this is the rears with the preloaded added on. So out of the box, it's recommended that we put a 10 millimeter preload on it. Sakebomb actually suggested that we put 18, so I went ahead and put 18. So that means that it should be 200 minus 18, so I believe that's like 182. So I measured pretty much close to 7 inches and 1 1/4, so that should give me like 7.2 of an inch. And yeah, it was kind of hard, right? Because doing this by yourself, an 18 millimeter preload is quite a long way from stock. So definitely excited now that I have everything set up. I still have to put these lowering cups on. I'll try to see if I could break this loose and add them on. If not, what I heard is that you could mount this onto the back first of the car, then break it loose, and then add on the lowering cups. But either way, the coilovers are essentially built, and it has all the preloads installed. So we'll go ahead and do that now. I just jacked up the car, as you can see. They're on jack stands. What we're gonna actually do is work on the fronts first. So I plan on doing the front first, and then we'll tackle the rear, because it seems like the front is the easier one. So make sure you loosen up the lug nuts for the wheel before lifting it up, and afterwards just remove the tire, and we'll go from there, and I'll show you what we need to do. Now that we have the wheel off, I'm showing you guys what you guys will need to take off. So there are a few bolts that we need to take off. We have to take off the brake line right here. This is should be a 12 millimeter, and then afterwards we have 3 more bolts underneath this, which is a 17, which will hold on the control arm. One right here, one right here, and we have one down here, this one right here, that is also a 17 millimeter. So once we have that taken off, we should be able to move it out of the way, so that way we could actually take the shred itself. But before we take it off, there's actually 2 more on top, which looks like 2 14s right here. And after that we have that, we should be able to just drop it down and reverse the process to actually put the Ohlins back on. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to break these open. Hopefully they're not too stuck, and if so, I might have to use some WD-40 or try to break it in some other ways. But I do have my breaker bar. Hopefully I don't need an extension to do so. So let's go ahead and do that. So once we take it out the old shock, all we need to do is just reverse the process and put in the Ohlins right here, and just reverse the process, right? Because we're gonna want to just reinstall everything how we just took it off. And make sure that once you do, torque the top has to be 35-36 foot-pounds. The upper control arm, I believe, is 77 pounds, and the lower bolt right here should be around 44 pounds. I'm gonna have all of the torque specs linked in the description below. So also one thing to notice is that when you're installing the control arms, you want it to be as straight as possible. So normally what I would do is I would just take a jack and jack it up from the bottom, so that way we don't mess up the bushings right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and it was relatively straightforward. Probably took me like 10-15 minutes for just to do one side, so it should be another 10-15 minutes for the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down and work on the other side, and after that we'll go ahead and start on the back. So I was able to finish both front shocks now. It was relatively easy to do. The only thing was that I ran into a little bit of issue on the passenger side. So the front side literally took me like 20 minutes to do. It was super fast and straightforward, but let me show you what happened with this the passenger side. So when I went to go remove the shocks, the OEM shocks, what happened was that the forks of the OEM shocks actually got wedged in between the lower control arm right here, right? and because of that I wasn't able to really rotate the rotors around and try to like remove the coilovers, right, because it was actually seized up in there. So I tried a bunch of things, but what worked for me was that I essentially got a jack and pretty much released the tension from the bottom, so pretty much jacking up the lower control arm right here. And once I was able to remove some of the tension, I ended up taking off the sway bar end link using a 4mm hex and I believe a 14mm socket, and just slowly removed it. And by doing that, it gave me a lot more room to work with and a lot more tension to be released from the actual lower control arm. And once that was done, I essentially just jacked it up even more and just used a rubber mallet, and I essentially started hitting the bottom of the fork right here, right? And by doing that, I was able to pop it out of where it was getting stuck between the lower control arm. And after that, it was just all smooth sailing. It took me like 10 minutes just to put everything apart. So hopefully you guys don't run into that same issue, but if you guys do, definitely try that out. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and do the last two now. I'm pretty exhausted because that took a lot longer than expected, but hopefully the last two should be smooth sailing. All right, so the rear should be relatively simple because we don't have to worry about any control arms, because as you can see, the control arm is actually right here. Sorry, it's a little dark. But essentially what we need to do is just remove the lower coil bolt up here. And we're going to need to go through the back too, because the top hats are actually right behind this trunk liner right here. So once we pop this open, we're going to need to, at least on the driver's side, we're going to need to remove these 3 bolts right here to essentially move the fuel pump out of the way, so that way we can actually get access to it. The passenger side, we don't have the fuel pump over here, right? So we can actually just should be able just to remove the rear the spare tires, and we'll have access to it. So I'm guessing it should be much quicker than the previous the front ones. But remember, I also have the remote, so I plan on probably installing one remote right here, which looks like a pretty good spot, and another one maybe up here, so that way I could just access it without actually having to go through the liners. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the liners and remove the pump, and then I'll show you where the top hats are, so that way you guys are familiar with how to take it off. So same thing down here with the bottom bolt. It's going to be a 17mm. These 3 were 8mm. And to show you what I mean is that you see how the suspension, the top hat is actually behind this gas pump right here. So essentially what we want to do is remove those 3 and remove this one right here, and from there we should be able to just bend this out of the way, so that way we can have access to that pump, the top hat actually. The passenger side is a lot easier to access, right? We just remove the rear wheel tire or the spare tire, and you will have access right here. You probably need a 14mm deep socket, and other than that, pretty straightforward. It's much easier than the fronts for sure, since I don't have to deal with the control arms. But I'm gonna go ahead and get this situated and get these installed. All right, guys. So it's actually the next day. I stopped working on the car because it was getting kind of late. I ran into the same problem for the rear passenger side as the front. So what happened was that when taking off the tower, it actually got wedged in here, and pretty much all the tension from the tower, it expanded, and that made things a little bit difficult to do. You could probably take out the sway bar end links to try to get more leverage, but what I did was I pretty much put a really long metal bar right here to pretty much lay on the actual bar itself, so that way it compresses down the control arm, and I essentially just started wiggling it out. If you have 2 people, it'll probably make the job easier. I did it by myself, so it did take a while, but I'm happy to say that is actually off and it's actually on the car now. So both sides are done. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys. I added the remote controls right here. I plan on installing them so it's like that. so that way and through the liner, so that way I could actually adjust them as needed. I'm actually going to go ahead and start working on the ride height now. So hopefully I could get something, you know, within 1 finger gap. But I'm gonna go ahead and play around with the ride height, and I'll show you guys what the final product will look like. So here's the final view of the car. I took it for a test spin, and it's definitely rides so much better, so much more compliant, especially over the little bumps. Turning with this car was super planted. However, I do need to raise the car a little bit. It's definitely sitting a tad bit lower than expected, but I'm planning on raising it 1/2 inch, and it's dope, man. I'm digging it so far. Tell me what you guys think. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's not much to say beside how good these Ohlins are. I mean, definitely I'm gonna play around with the settings, the stiffness and whatnot, and definitely raise it up a little bit, because I was scratching the little, I'm guessing the mud flaps and whatnot, just going off my driveway and just taking turns, and yeah. But other than that, hopefully you guys learned a lot, or you know, you're planning on doing your own coilover setup. I definitely recommend doing so. It's relatively easy, just beside those pain points of it getting stuck. But I'm super happy with how everything turned out, and I can't wait to get my wheels on. It's gonna be another video for when that happens, but hopefully you guys stay tuned. And if you guys like this type of content, man, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on this video. It will really help me out. Other than that, man, peace.